Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. Joining us this week is none other than Brian West from Wire from the FreeSWITCH core team. Thank you for joining us today, Brian.
Thanks for having me today.
So I hear there's an interesting new FreeSWITCH release. So maybe you could start from there. What's
Well,
the lowdown?
okay, so we do have a FreeSWITCH Enterprise repo, which is for our commercial customers. We've done an extensive release on October 9th. We peeled back the onion, so to speak, fixed a bunch of stuff that was unique to FreeSWITCH Enterprise. There's a few differences in FreeSWITCH Enterprise which do trickle into the open source community. There's just a little bit of a delay to let things bake and get things where they need to be. We put a lot of time in burning it in ourselves on our own network and our own labs. It's what I run on my laptop when I'm testing FreeSWITCH. There's just a lot of new functionality going into FreeSWITCH Enterprise that will eventually trickle in to the open source community. We're going to be publishing the release notes starting in the next release, but Chelsea's going to put the latest ones out in the Friday newsletter. So that people can keep an eye on kind of what we're doing in the background and realize that FreeSWITCH is still moving forward rapidly. It just may be happening in a vacuum where you may not have the visibility into some of the things we're working on. And we hope to get that where you can kind of keep an eye on that as well, so you can see what's coming down the pipeline and help you guys do a little more planning.
Nice. So, can you give us a few changes that happened there? I know mod MP4 and related stuff got removed. There's a lot going on around video, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of improvements around video. We removed some legacy modules like Mod Capstrol, the Mod.E codec, GSM Open, the Mod Isaac codec that was not used. There was a voice changing model, LabSPA that we removed. They were all moved to our contributor. They're just not gone. They're just not part of the main repo anymore. Things like Mod Port Audio, Sangoma codec, Skype Open, SMS flow route, and then a bunch of improvements in Sofia, some refactoring in the core media engine, some security improvements, which all of those security improvements have trickled down into the open source already. We treat all security things across the board in both the open source release and our enterprise the same. They all get the fixes at the same time. So that does, we don't have a lot of those, but when we do, we take them very seriously.
Yeah, I know that's always important, and I think FreeSWITCH is doing great still, even the open source part. So, well, since we're here, some people very often ask me what the difference are between the enterprise supported version and the open source version. So, what is the short version of that? Like, what's different?
There is about a year ahead of open source. That gives our commercial partners a little bit of a head start with some of the new features and functionality that are coming down the pipeline, and it helps us focus on our commercial relationships and their requirements. It's not like we're sitting here to ignoring the open source. We actually have some announcements about that today as well. So our goal is to kind of take ourselves back to our roots of when we first started the FreeSWITCH project. And I don't know if a lot of people remember this, but we had a conference that would go on every day, almost all day long, where we would hang out and discuss what we're doing, what people are working on, what issues you're having, just general architectural, we'd talk about anything. It didn't even have to be FreeSWITCH related. So we're bringing an aspect of that back here. Starting this Friday, we're going to be doing a SignalWire hangout, which is pretty much anything FreeSWITCH, AI, SignalWire. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central, and it's going to allow us to get back to our roots, get back to our community, and be there and help as much as we can in that level. So it's going to be me and my team. We're going to be there hanging out. Anybody's welcome to drop by this Friday, the 9th. 9th. And make sure, if you got questions, you want to know how to do something, by all means, drop by. Me and my team will be there to assist you. I'm going to be having my code editor on screen working on some AI agents for SignalWire, so you guys can watch me and kind of get an idea how I work. If you want assistance setting up, say, your development environment or getting pointers on how mine's set up so that you could develop a lot quicker, I'm there for that as well, because my entire development environment has been turned on its head in the last 3 weeks.
Oh
I
wow.
used to work in a remote terminal in EMAC.
Give us a preview then, because I do need to run some FreeSWITCH soon too. So
Okay, well, let me tell you what I got set up and how I operate now. I currently have switched to using Cursor AI, which is an AI based code SDK, which it's based on VS Code. You have access to all the LLMs within the editor. You have Cursor Compose. So, for example, if I want to create a Docker project to package Kubernetes, I just hit Command I type in the prompt, I want this thing, and then it starts making all the files for you. So it'll start creating your Docker file, all of the
for
base
real,
files needed. Yes, it will for real just spin it up out of thin air based on your prompt.
I've been using GPT, so I guess I'm living in the past now.
Yes, I was too. So my goal is to kind of help elevate everybody.
Oh,
I'm actually coding 10 times faster than I did previously, and I've learned Python in 3 weeks. So I'm actually coding all in Python. I'm working on all of the examples I did in Perl for anything we've done for SignalWire or FreeSWITCH, and to converting all of that to Python. So I'm going to be working with anybody that wants to, jump on that bandwagon on Friday and kind of see how I did it. I kind of did it last week during our AI office hours. We had somebody about 30 minutes prior to the office hours. We had a business call and they had a use case they wanted to use AI for. I didn't currently have anything drafted for that particular use case. Uh, I did spend about 20 minutes using ChatGPT to draft my plan for said AI agent. And by the time AI office hours rolled around, I showed off what little bit I had prepared, and then I just said, "Let's go for it." And so we coded from that planning document that I didn't even have 30 minutes prior to the call to a completed AI agent in less than 40 minutes. And that now is available on GitHub, and I have worked on it over the weekend. It all fits on a single page of text now, and I posted about it yesterday on LinkedIn. I did a lot of cleanup on it, so I've made it easier for people to build AI agents on SignalWire's platform in fairly short order. So if anybody
wow.
wants to see how, I've changed my entire, like yesterday I wrote test cases using AI for one of our APIs. Took me 5 minutes. I just described what I wanted, gave it the endpoints, gave it the documentation. It whipped me up a Python script that was 99% correct. I had to go in and tweak a couple of things that I just didn't like and add some debug lines, which I asked it to do. I said, can you add debug lines for every aspect of this test case? And it just done it. And it ran and was able to validate what I was looking for, which was I found a bug, and I needed to make sure I could pinpoint that once the bug fix is in production. I have a test rig, I can go check that out. So I'll be writing more of those as well, which is unlike me to write test cases. But when you have AI at your side, it's like having that little guy on your shoulder telling you everything you need to do in your ear. So it's
So
very interesting.
I am a test-driven developer coming from Ruby, so but that doesn't change the thing. Like it's still better to have a tool that will help you write tests in any case, because if you're writing them yourself, even if you do test-driven, there's two things. One, you don't think of all the cases,
Mm-hmm.
and you're always going to miss one. Like, what if one of the variables is set but the other isn't? You never do that, right? You test with both variables, and the other thing is permutation still takes a long time, so it's still faster to do it that way. I really want to try. I mean, it sounds super interesting. Well, there's one thing that comes to mind. So when at ClueCon, I did a lunch and learn about FreeSWITCH using FreeSWITCH with SignalWire, and a lot of people were interested in bringing AI to their FreeSWITCH. Do you think there's going to be something you could show on Friday, or do you have any pointers for people trying to do that? So already a picture. I already have a system. It's got its own WebRTC. I'm using Word or whatever, but AI is way beyond what you can do with a local FreeSWITCH. What
Yeah.
would be the best way to bring it?
Well, we do have a how-to to bolt on SignalWire's AI agent onto your FreeSWITCH currently, but trying to implement what we've done over the last 2 years in terms of AI, this was many nights of no sleep, going through learning. It was a daily. You would wake up after spending a day working on something, and the entire landscape of AI would change overnight, and it was an ever shifting target for the first year of our development cycle. If it's not that shifty anymore, it's fairly stable. Things are awesome. The way you prompt the AI, I've learned there's various ways. Like when we first started AI Agent, we were more of a process driven, step driven, give it a list of steps to perform. Over the last couple of months, I've changed to more of an objective based prompting where you give it all the details and you give it the objective. And then it actually works a lot better when you do it in that particular manner. So there's a lot of learning that I've done just here even recently about all of this, and it's you gotta keep up on it. You gotta try things. You'd be surprised how important it is to be more in a human mindset when dealing with some of these AI technologies. I start by giving my AI agent a name, and then I think about it as if it's a person, and I approach it in that manner. So I seem to get pretty successful with that mindset, but you also have to remember you have this thing that is as smart as a computer. For example, formatting data, creating data out of thin air. Um, like you can make these things create V cards out of thin air. Like take the data you've collected and make a V card with it, and it will just spit one out. A human can't do that at a desk. So you've got this really odd mishmash of really smart person with really dumb person, and it's more human than anybody really wants to let on. You see the behaviors and how AI behaves in just interactions with humans. Like I'll be on a meeting and I'll be hearing people talk and I'll be like, these two people think they're talking about the same thing, but I sense they're not. And so I'll ask clarifying questions and come to find out they're not even in the same library or the same book. And it's fun to watch these quirky behaviors that you see in the language models in humans because they were trained on human data. So you would expect some of those aspects of humanity to pop out.
That's super interesting. Yeah, the I've been doing a lot of with AI too. It's and it's really a game changer. As you know, I'm a solutions architect somewhere among other things. So I do a lot of demos for customers, and even just using the plain old GPT with some prompting that I think comes from your team. So like the prompts I'm using comes from your team has
Mhm.
been very helpful in getting things out quickly. And every customer now gets their own tailored demo. That's exactly what they needed to do. Not a generic demo, but if they wanted to something special, it's there and it works. It is really it's really a great tool to use, and I really want to try Cursor.
Yeah, Cursor, I'm very impressed with. It's like I say, it upended my entire development cycle. I used to work in a remote terminal where I could just SSH in and work, and I was using Copilot with Emacs because I had a plugin for that. But this Cursor has taken,
Emacs,
yeah.
not if you need help. Are you
Oh,
being
I know.
held
Well,
hostage?
that Tony and I, we've worked in Emacs for 20 years. I mean, it's very difficult to change a development environment, but now you have this whole shift of you
I
have to.
code in VS Code using Vim bindings. So just so you know, so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, they do have an Emacs binding, but I can't use it because I end up in the terminal window opening Emacs out of an Instinct, and I use a Emacs key, and it
Hmm.
exits terminal or cursor. So I got to be careful. So I've just decided I'm learning a new way, changing my habits. But in the process, I've learned Python. I've learned a different mindset to move faster and rely on using the AI to move things forward quicker than I ever would have previously. That whole that mantra of thinking about things and procrastinating to go do a complex task is completely almost wiped out in me. I just hit Control L or Control I and either use Cursor Compose or Chat to enact something I need done. It's not like I can't go look up all of this information and look at the syntax and the documentation, but why would I when I have this thing that can do it all for me? Um, I still think you need to understand the programming languages you're dealing with, software
Hmm.
engineering in general, and kind of how software fits together to adequately use some of these tools to their fullest extent, um, because then you can know what to ask for and know what's wrong because there's times I can spot the bug. I know why this behavior is happening, but I just can't see it in the code. So I'll just chat with the AI for a minute. I think this is going on. And it'll go, oh yeah, you're right. Here's this line of code right here. Is this thing is what's causing your problem, and it'll give you recommendations, and you can talk through. It's just like having a pair programmer with you all the time, which is
That's
really great
really
for people with ADHD like me.
yeah. The idea of yeah. I think so. Let me ask you something. This is a discussion that I've been having with a couple others, other people like you, and unfortunately not like myself, are true peak developers. I'm more of a generalist. What do we do with juniors now? Like, how do we train new programmers in a world where you might not really need to program anymore? I know it sounds silly, but right now
Did we
I
lose
know how to articulate the problem by AI, and it's gonna even. I mean, I can just imagine a year from now. A year from now, I'll be typing up 2 pages of a program description in somewhere. Just click go grab a coffee, and by the time I come back, it's deployed on Heroku, and it's got 3 subscribers already.
you? Right. Well, I think the biggest thing we have to do is kind of go back to our roots of computers and possibly teach how computers operate at the basics, and some of like, because once you understand, comparison, branching, logic, how math works, pretty much any programming language can be picked up fairly rapidly as long as you know the base concepts. And I
Hmm.
think that's one thing I think is missing, is I never was trained on that. I learned this stuff when I was 8 years old on a TI 99 4A with a big old manual about this thick, going through it, just trying stuff until I figured it out, poking at it. And but you got to have a certain mindset to want to do that at 8 years old. It was my escape. It was what I did almost my entire childhood. I remember getting told that computers were a waste of time and they would never mount any or go anywhere, and I'd never make any money in computers. I knew better growing up that was what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. So I just ignored all the people saying those things to me and just kept going. Even if I didn't know how to do something, I would dive in and give it a shot. Like, what's the worst that can happen? You learn something or you fail. That's just how I always approach things. It's the worst case.
Yeah, the I think you're perfectly right. The AI skips the manual work, but if you don't understand how systems work deeply, it's never going to be able to help you the right way and results. I mean, I have a hobby which is trading. I mostly just do indexes and stuff and long term, but I've been looking into automating some stuff because I'm interesting. I in the weekends I spent a couple hours trying to get I think Gemini to write me a super quick example of an investing strategy and backtesting, meaning that it downloads the historical data for an index and then it checks, okay, would you have you made money if you had done this thing over just buying the index and holding it? Well, I didn't get a working software, mostly because I probably don't know enough Python and I wasn't really sure what I was doing. So I couldn't get a simple thing such as a 50-line script. Those things are based on data frames, which are you can picture them as multi-dimensional arrays. Python has this thing where you can do a lot of things with that kind of structure, but somehow it was always out of bounds or wrong label or wrong count or whatever. So yeah, you need to know what you're doing. It's
Yeah,
not that simple.
it's like knowing how to use a hammer. You can't use a hammer to screw a screw in, and so knowing which tool to use in the right place is the same as knowing, kind of the concept of what you need to do in that space, and being able to either ask for it or understand what that concept is.
Yeah, and there is going to be a resurgence in computer science, which is great. I guess it is. Many of us. I mean, I did computer engineering in university, so I learned a lot of that through university. But like yourself, I started very early. I was coding basic on I think it was 1989, probably earlier. I got an old computer from my dad's office. Like they got the new ones, so they got me an old one made its way to my house to my mother's happiness because at the time it was the size of a small fridge. And but it was really interesting. So yeah, computer science is going to be interesting. That's a very so guys, you got to study. go read up on everything from binary and up, and just learn it from there, because that's what you will need. And I absolutely agree. Like this.
And the same problem's happening right now in telecom.
Hmm.
We
Oh,
have
really?
we are actually losing a lot of telecom knowledge as people age out and retire. The younger generation is not as informed about like the base how the PSTN became the PSTN, and it's all switching to IP, which is something I said would happen years ago. But there's still some of the legacy stuff out there, and how TDM and all the SS7 and these networks all communicate seems to be one of those areas where that expertise is just drying up and going away. And it's like the nostalgia of going back to the beginning of FreeSWITCH, that time in 2005. All of this stuff was still there. You could get a PRI line with these. Now they won't even hardly sell you this stuff unless you're in specific locations or have specific needs. And sometimes it's overpriced, and there's alternative options that are IP based that you need to consider. So I think the younger generation needs to look at some of this telecom stuff. And I think a lot of the things we're seeing in interop and the craziness with 180, 183 and early media, it all is a result of people not truly understanding some of these telecom concepts properly. And that's how we've ended up with some of these really strange implementations of these concepts.
Yeah, I think yeah, the telco world is very interesting in one thing. Systems are old by the time they become mainstream. Like the originators of IMS are already retired and have been for a while. So you don't get to interact with the origins of a system.
No.
IMS, I mean, again, I've been working with IMS since, I would say, 15 years ago ish, probably less, like 12, more like 12
Mhm.
by myself. And it was shocking for me to discover that IMS is like 35 years old.
Mhm.
It's just that it didn't make it to telcos until 10 years ago. So
Yeah,
it's it,
it's
it is.
and it's kind of like the whole AT&T's ATM network. That was short lived as well. I'm pretty sure they still have a little bit, but I do remember them you really getting rid of it quickly. Maintenance costs and things.
Yeah, on the other side, though, there's a lot of investment going on. I keep saying this, but it comes up every year. Like, it's the second year in a row that I visit Barcelona, the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. And the title of the conference is essentially monetizing 5G. Those companies have spent 20 billion, have given $20 billion to the real winners, like the people that sell the shovels in the gold rush.
Yeah.
So Ericsson and Siemens made bank, and Huawei made bank on selling them the equipment. And the telcos are now thinking, well, what do we do with those 5Gs now? Which, by the way, is something SingleWire can help you with. Because
Yes.
you should bake our AI into your 5G networks and finally make it do something useful. Because people don't care about being able to watch a Netflix movie at double the speed, because it does, you don't want to do that. Like, once you can watch it at normal speed, you don't care.
Right. And speaking of investment, internet speeds are doing nothing but getting faster and faster. Um, I, for example, live in a little town in southeastern Oklahoma that was recently mentioned on Saturday Night Live, the Reba McEntire impression this past weekend. I live in McAllister, Oklahoma, which is the home of Reba McEntire. And I have in this tiny little town 10 gigabit internet fiber with a public IP. And it's fairly inexpensive comparative to, say, it's about the same I was paying for Starlink. So it's fairly inexpensive, get faster internet. Gigabit is $60 on fiber around here. So that's not very much at all in comparison. Before, you were paying hundreds of dollars. Like my mother-in-law, she was paying 200 and something dollars a month for cable TV, which is just the basics, and internet at like 100 megabits. And so I got her gigabit and YouTube TV. So she has a better
Well,
experience.
that's yeah. There's the whole edge computing thing, and the fact that LLMs are getting a bit easier to run on more on closer to users. There's a lot going on there. So
Yeah.
again, 5G is great. We've done a lot of work at SignalWire. I have a 5G cell lying around somewhere in this mess, and we need to anything we can help you with. Let me know. Well, Brian, thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to meeting you on Friday.
All right. See you
What
Friday.
time is what
Friday the
time is
8th.
the
It's Friday the 8th at 9 a.m. Central. I will be available. I'll put the links in all the channels. Chelsea will put it in the newsletter. If you have any problems, just ping us in our Slack community channel. I put a notice in there as well. It's Friday the 8th. I know I said 9th in the beginning, but my brain, I flipped the number, but I'm correcting it now. We'll get it sorted out.
Friday
But
the 8th, yes.
thank you guys.
And I really want to see Cursor and FreeSWITCH in action, so I'll be there. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Brian. And
All right.
well, rest of the people, I'll see you next week.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.